In 2018, Rare and Microsoft released arguably the greatest pirate game of all time, Sea of Thieves. This game invited players to take the helm of a ship with up to 3 friends and explore an open world filled with islands, shipwrecks, skeletons, and other online players that could be friend or foe. The game encouraged players to experiment and play around with all kinds of combat from cannon fire to magic cannonballs and cutlasses, as well as movement options such as handbrake turning the ship using the anchor or even firing yourself out of a cannon. This led to the game being a lot of fun to play, especially with friends, and it truly felt like you were a crew of pirates with no set goal. This meant that players made their own adventures, doing quests and hunting for treasure, or even fishing and playing shanties, while sailing from port to port to sell their wares. Since launch, the game has been continuously updated to fix and revive at times. However, in my opinion, there is one part of this game that has required no fix, and that is the music, which I'll be talking about today. Robin Beanland, the composer for Sea of Thieves, had an interesting challenge when he came to the job. This is because not only is their music designed for the game that the player can hear as they experience the many adventures, but the players themselves can also play music using the instruments playable in-game. These instruments include the concertina, the hurdy-gurdy, the drum, and the banjo, and all 4 instruments had to be designed to play a variety of shanties. The way this works in-game is that one member of the crew can start playing one of the shanties from the list available, and then if other members of the crew join in, they will play a harmonic backing track underneath the original instrument by joining in using a timestamp from the track. This usually means that one instrument, for example the concertina, will play the lead, and then the drums will provide a steady rhythm, whilst the hurdy-gurdy and banjo provide rhythmic stabs or chords over the top, much like you would expect from a band. This is easily the most noticeable musical feature in Sea of Thieves, as it has allowed players to gather around and actually play a shanty together, and therefore each and every one of the shanties is designed for any combination of the instruments to play it. What's great about these shanties, however, is they are used much more than we realise in game, and I'll talk more about that later on. From picking up coins in Mario to hitting a masterful swing in Wii Golf, game music has always required musical sound cues, and Sea of Thieves is an absolute masterclass at this. At a base level, this is because when you complete a mission or dig up the correct chest, you get major, positive, shanty-style music, or if it's the end of a bigger mission, you can get a more fanfare, horn-type tune that instantly signals to the player that they've done the right thing. Sea of Thieves, however, isn't just there to cue you in when something is going well, and instead, Beanland created a soundtrack that could cue you in for a variety of things. This includes high strings and chromatics when there is danger nearby that has not come into view yet, as this cues the player in that something is not safe or something is about to happen, and this builds suspense and tension for the crew, as those high chromatic strings create that classic horror feel. As well as this, if a battle is just beginning, then Beanland uses a lot of steady percussion and chanting, as well as short brass stabs that create the feeling that there is a large enemy to come up against. This is because chanting creates the idea that this is a big leader surrounded by people, and the percussion and brass stabs create a feeling of tension as it builds toward the battle as it crescendos, and this cues the player in that this will be an epic battle, with the odds stacked against them. Tricks like these, classic movie orchestra tricks, are a great way to cue players in my opinion, as people are used to hearing this kind of music from films like Pirates of the Caribbean, which Sea of Thieves takes inspiration from, and therefore, by using the same kind of techniques and instrumentation, players are much more easily cued in and prepared for the mission at hand. Tall Tales are the story-driven part of Sea of Thieves, which is more of a suggested set of tasks for the players than a real story. This being said, however, the tall tales, if done right, and players pay attention to the large amount of reading that is needed, can be extremely interesting from a lore perspective. This is then further heightened by the music, with a variety of different musical ideas being used for different emotions in tall tales. This includes romantic sixths and woodwind harmonies in the love story of Wild Rose, which adds a more piratey take on that classic love theme style that was really made popular by John Williams. Then you have very calming and light Celeste and strings combo used in A Star to Sail By, which is a tall tale all about the wonder of the stars, with the Celeste used to capture that wonder and heighten it with its magical Harry Potter type magic sound. Then, finally, my personal favourite, Shroud Broken, which is a brass and strings fanfare type tune that is played for the final set of Tall Tales and is used when the players complete their epic journey, and this is used as an epic piece to accompany them out as they take in the grand scale of what they've accomplished. For me, this is the ultimate send-off piece due to its intense crescendos and Disney-like swells, and I think the use of the full orchestra here, which isn't that common in Sea of Thieves, is perfectly timed to create that full atmosphere of achievement. As well as this, I have to mention the use of fifths in this piece, as the use of the fifth interval, or the perfect cadence, from 5 to 1, or in this case G to C, is spectacular, and it uses that classic hero sound we are used to in cinema, and flips it to make it into a fanfare for the players after such a momentous achievement. In my opinion, this is the greatest part of the Sea of Thieves soundtrack, and it's certainly up there in terms of how to conclude a story like the last Tall Tale. Sea of Thieves music is clearly very impressive. However, beyond the musical features and fanfares, there is also a very believable world created by the music within it. This is down to a few reasons, which I will discuss, starting with the instrumentation. As mentioned earlier, the 4 main instruments in the shanties are banjos, drums, hurdy-gurdies and concertinas, and whilst yes, these are mainly used for the shanties, most of the music for the rest of Sea of Thieves soundtrack is also constructed from them, and this is because of the authenticity of their sound. What I mean by this is that these instruments are very believable pirate instruments you would expect on the ship, and due to the weathered and creaking sound made from older instruments like these, the pirate world is much more believable, as the music isn't all full orchestras that someone is hiding below deck. Instead, the music we hear while going about our daily lives on the Sea of Thieves is led by these more piratey instruments, and this creates a more real world, as if the music is what we would consider to be accurate, we are more likely to be subconsciously immersed in the world. This, however, does not mean full orchestras are bad, as from time to time a full fanfare for storming a fortress is needed to make the player's journey seem more epic and immersive, and so there is definitely a balance to be had. This brings me to finally talk about the second place all the shanties are used, and this is when they are played on the grander scale by very different instruments to the original 4. This takes place in tracks like Merrick's Farewell, that uses the main theme of Maiden's Voyage, but slowed down and made more epic with strings, voices and brass that creates a true farewell for the character, using a theme we already know, and it's this familiarity that makes the passing of Merrick even more emotional, as it is a rendition of what he once was, made melancholy for his passing, which triggers a more emotive response from our nostalgia. As well as this, in the track The Shrouded Ghost, a much more orchestral and heavy-hitting brass arrangement of Maiden's Voyage is played that turns it into an epic action sequence, using much heavier percussion and lower brass instrumentation. This takes the original shanty and transforms it into a much more powerful piece that gets players ready for an epic battle, and it's this familiarity with the shanty turned battle piece that makes it all the more epic, as the music has been amped up, and therefore this subconsciously also amps up the players. These are just 2 examples of where the main shanties feed into the more epic themes. However, this happens throughout the soundtrack, with fanfare versions of each shanty making an appearance from time to time. This puts together the 2 sides of the Sea of Thieves music, which are the shanties and authentic pirate sounds that reel us into the world of pirates and worn down instruments, whilst the more grand and epic orchestral stuff that only comes out on special occasions helps to up the stakes at the game's biggest moments. I think by combining these 2 sides of the musical coin, Beanland and his team have created the perfect soundtrack for people who want to live inside this pirate world and listen to the music that they always imagined they would hear from their early days watching Pirates of the Caribbean and wishing for a pirate game of their own, and so in my opinion, Sea of Thieves is another masterpiece in musical soundtrack. So that concludes what I think about the Sea of Thieves soundtrack. Let me know down below what you think, and let me know what other soundtracks you want me to cover in the future. Thanks very much for watching, goodbye.